It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in the upscale neighborhood of Ikoyi, Lagos. The air smelled of roasted suya, exotic perfumes, and luxury. Traffic moved slowly outside the tall glass walls of the Urban Palm Eatery, one of the most expensive restaurants on Bourdillon Road. Inside, cool air from hidden AC units swept through the marble floors. Gentle jazz played from invisible speakers while sharply dressed waiters floated from table to table, refilling glasses and delivering gourmet meals. Businessmen tapped on laptops, women laughed over brunch, and everything seemed perfect until the door opened. At first, nobody noticed. But then came the quiet pause, the shift in mood. Heads turned. A barefoot elderly woman stepped into the restaurant. Her wrapper was faded, her blouse torn at the sleeves. In her hands, she clutched a small nylon bag like it was made of gold. Her feet were cracked, her face weathered. But her presence would change everything that day. The woman's name was Mama Ifeoma. She looked like someone's grandmother, maybe even a retired teacher or an old trader, but today, life had reduced her to silence and hunger. She took a few steps into the restaurant, her knees trembling slightly. Her eyes darted from table to table, not in fear but in quiet hope. She wasn't there to cause a scene. All she wanted was leftover food, anything at all to calm the ache in her belly. But the moment she appeared, the once lively atmosphere shifted. A young woman in designer sunglasses whispered to her friend, "What's this one doing here?" A man in a suit scoffed, "They've turned Ikoyi to Mushin now." Even one of the waiters, a slim boy with a sharp jawline, leaned towards his colleague and muttered, "Who let this woman in? She go drive customers away." Still, Mama Ifeoma walked on. Each step was heavy. Each breath a prayer. She had no dignity left, just courage and a necklace that hung loosely from her neck. Behind the gleaming reception counter stood Mr. Daimeji, the restaurant manager, a tall, proud man in his early 40s with a crisp shirt and a polished wristwatch that sparkled each time he moved. His smile was known to melt wallets and keep the wealthy coming. But today, that smile turned cold. As Mama Ifeoma approached, he stepped forward, arms folded. "Mama," he said loudly enough for nearby diners to hear, "this place is not for people like you. Please take your business elsewhere." A low gasp came from one corner, but no one said a word. The old woman lowered her head and responded gently, "I'm not asking for much, sir. If you have anything left from your kitchen, even just rice water, I'll be grateful." Mr. Daimeji chuckled dryly. "Rice water? Madam, this is Urban Palm, not a buka." He waved his hand dismissively. "Go and beg under the bridge. You don't belong here." She stood still. Her hunger roared louder than the humiliation, but she did not cry. As silence hung over the room like thick harmattan fog, a sound broke through, clack, clack, clack. Heels. Stylish. Firm. Confident. From a far corner of the restaurant, a young woman stood up. Her name was Dr. Amara Okizi, a 35-year-old Nigerian-born medical consultant based in Canada. She had returned to Lagos just a week ago to reconnect with her roots and rest from the pressure of Western medicine. Amara was dressed in a simple cream dress and wore no flashy jewelry, except a single gold chain around her wrist. She had been quietly sipping zobo and eating garden egg sauce when the old woman walked in. At first, she had hesitated, but now she had seen and heard enough. Her eyes locked onto Mr. Daimeji, then Mama Ifeoma, then the necklace around the old woman's neck. Her chest tightened. Something felt strangely familiar. But more importantly, something felt painfully wrong. Without a word, she picked up her purse and walked toward the counter, her voice ready. Dr. Amara stood beside Mama Ifeoma, her presence commanding, her tone calm but piercing. "Excuse me," she said, eyes fixed on Mr. Daimeji, I believe I just heard you insult this woman because she's hungry." The room went silent again, even the waiters froze. Mr. Daimeji adjusted his collar and scoffed, "Madam, with all due respect, this woman came here to beg. This is a respectable establishment, and is that why you embarrassed her in front of everyone?" Amara interrupted, her voice louder now. "Is dignity now reserved for the wealthy alone?" People began to murmur. Some turned their phones to record. A few looked down in shame. Amara turned to the room. "She could be your mother. My mother. Anyone's mother. Is this what we've become, people who laugh at hunger because we can afford cocktails?" Mama Ifeoma stood motionless, confused by the sudden turn of events. But Amara wasn't done. Her eyes moved back to the necklace, the dull, rusted piece resting against the woman's chest. Something deep inside her stirred. The necklace was old, nothing special to the eye, just a faded bronze chain with a round pendant shaped like a seashell. But to Amara, it was everything. Her eyes narrowed as memories began to float to the surface: boarding school in Enugu, late-night laughter, study sessions, shared tears. That necklace had belonged to her best friend, Chioma Modi, a girl full of life and love, who died suddenly from a rare illness in their final year. They had made a promise to always find each other, even in the next life. Amara's hand trembled slightly as she turned to Mama Ifeoma. "Mama. This necklace. Where did you get it?" The old woman looked down at her chest, then back up. "It was my daughter's. She gave it to me before she passed." Amara's breath caught in her throat. "What was her name?" "Chioma. Chioma Modi," the old woman said, voice cracking. "My only child." Amara staggered slightly. The universe had just opened a door she thought was long closed. Tears welled in Amara's eyes as she whispered, "Chioma was my best friend. My sister in school. We lost contact when I traveled." Mama Ifeoma looked up, eyes wide. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. She simply reached for Amara's hand and held it with trembling fingers. The pain in their hearts matched the loss, the years, the silence. Amara brought out her phone, hands shaking, and opened a photo album named Chioma. She showed Mama Ifeoma a faded photo, two smiling teenage girls in school uniform, arms around each other. The old woman gasped, placed her hand on the screen, and nodded, "That's her. That's my daughter. My Chioma." Emotion broke the room like thunder. Some people turned away, wiping tears. Mr. Daimeji stepped back, face pale. Amara sat Mama Ifeoma down, ordered a fresh plate of jollof rice, fried fish, and water. "You're not alone, Mama," she whispered. "Not anymore." The necklace hadn't just sparked memory, it had reconnected two broken pieces of a promise made long ago. As the plate of jollof rice was placed in front of her, Mama Ifeoma stared at it as if it were a dream. The scent danced into her nose, warm and inviting. Her fingers shook slightly as she picked up the spoon. She took one small bite. Then another. Then she paused, eyes wide with disbelief, before quietly whispering, "Thank you, my daughter." Amara smiled gently and placed her hand over the old woman's, saying, "You don't need to thank me, Mama. I should be the one thanking you. For raising the most beautiful soul I ever met." The entire restaurant had gone quiet. The judgment had turned to guilt. Some guests could not finish their food. Others looked away, too ashamed to meet Mama Ifeoma's eyes. The next day, the video clips began to circulate online. They showed everything: Mr. Daimeji's insults, the cold laughter, and the powerful moment when Amara stood up to defend the old woman. The footage went viral across Nigeria. Blogs carried the headline, "Old Woman Humiliated at Upscale Ikoyi Restaurant, Then This Happened." Comments flooded in. Some applauded Amara. Others were angry at the restaurant. And many were heartbroken over the sight of an elderly woman begging for bones. Within 48 hours, over 500,000 people had viewed the clip. Radio stations discussed it. Churches used it as a sermon example. Even the governor's wife shared it on her page, captioned, "Every elder deserves dignity." Meanwhile, Amara stayed silent online. She wasn't interested in fame. She was focused on something more important. She had made a silent vow in that restaurant to honor the memory of Chioma. And that meant giving Mama Ifeoma not just food, but a life she deserved to live. By the third day, Amara made a decision. She took a trusted real estate agent to Banana Island and bought a modest, two-bedroom bungalow, not extravagant, but elegant and quiet, with white-painted walls, wide windows, and a small garden in front. She named it House of Mercy. That afternoon, she brought Mama Ifeoma in a boat ride to see the place. As the car pulled up, the old woman looked confused. "Is this someone's house?" she asked softly. Amara smiled. "Yes, Mama. It's yours." Mama Ifeoma stared in disbelief, then covered her mouth as tears flooded her cheeks. "For me? Me?" Her voice trembled. "Yes," Amara nodded. "Chioma helped me become who I am today. Let me help you live the rest of your days in peace." That day, Mama Ifeoma entered her own home again. For the first time in years, she slept on a mattress with clean sheets. She had running water, steady electricity, and her heart was no longer hungry. God had remembered her, through the daughter of her daughter. That evening, Amara sat with Mama Ifeoma in the new living room. The soft hum of the ceiling fan filled the air. Outside, the golden Lego sun began to set, casting a calm glow through the glass windows. Amara had brought a box of old items, photos, notebooks, and mementos from her school days with Chioma. She placed them gently on the table between them. "Mama," she said softly, "I brought these. I thought we could remember her together." Mama Ifeoma nodded, her eyes already moist. They opened the box and slowly brought out memories, pictures of Chioma in school uniform, laughing with braces on her teeth, a faded birthday card that read, "To my best friend forever, Amara." She placed them gently on the table between them. "Mama," she said softly, "I brought these. I thought we could remember her together." Mama Ifeoma nodded, her eyes already moist. They opened the box and slowly brought out memories, pictures of Chioma in school uniform, laughing with braces on her teeth, a faded birthday card that read, "To my best friend forever, Amara." The next morning, Legos buzzed as usual, cars honked, hawkers shouted, the rhythm of the city never missed a beat. But in one small corner of Ikoyi, something had changed. At the House of Mercy, Mama Ifeoma stood outside in her wrapper and slippers, watering flowers Amara had planted for her. She smiled as the water danced across the green leaves. Peace, the young assistant Amara had hired, was sweeping the compound. Inside, a pot of egusi soup simmered. For the first time in years, Mama Ifeoma felt like a human being again. She was no longer hiding behind shame or hunger. She was alive and seen. Amara had arranged for a private doctor to check on her regularly, and a small monthly allowance was set up through a bank account in her name. People who once passed her by on the street without greeting now stopped to wave. The woman who once stood barefoot in a luxury restaurant was now living in quiet dignity. God hadn't forgotten her. And neither had Legos. One Sunday afternoon, Amara drove Mama Ifeoma to a local Anglican church in Folomo. Word had already spread about the miracle that happened at the urban palm eatery. When Mama Ifeoma stepped into the church, dressed in a fresh Ankara wrapper with matching scarf and shoes, the entire congregation turned. There was silence, then a quiet ripple of whispers, "Is that her?" The woman from the video. Then someone began to clap. Another joined. Then another. Until the entire church stood, clapping for her, not in mockery, but in honor. The pastor walked down from the altar and embraced her warmly. "Mama," he said, "you have reminded us what grace looks like." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Amara sat beside her, holding her hand. That day, the sermon changed. It was no longer about the prodigal son. It was about respect, dignity, and how kindness from one soul can change the world of another. And as Mama Ifeoma raised her hands in praise, she whispered to herself, "My daughter, you didn't die in vain." Meanwhile, on the other side of Lagos, Mr. Daimeji's world was falling apart. The video of his cruel behavior had cost him everything. He was called in by the restaurant owner, Madam Bunny Aluko, a woman of class and principle. She had built Urban Palm Eatery on values of excellence, warmth, and respect for all. She watched the viral clip 3 times. Her eyes darkened with each replay. "So this is how you've been managing my restaurant behind my back?" she asked, voice low but deadly. Daimeji stuttered, "Madam, I don't," she cut in. "You humiliated a hungry old woman. On camera. You laughed at her pain. And you want to keep managing my brand?" With a wave of her hand, she said, "You're fired. Kindly see yourself out before I call security." 2 days later, his face appeared on blogs with the headline, "Ex-manager fired after mocking elderly woman in Ikoyi." No company would hire him again. All it took was one act of pride, and his fall was complete. One quiet evening, Amara sat with Mama Ifeoma on the veranda, watching the stars. A gentle breeze rolled through the compound, and in the distance, the hum of Lagos traffic could be heard. Amara took a deep breath. "Mama," she said gently, "there's something I've never told you." The old woman turned, eyes curious. Amara continued, "I'm an orphan. I lost both my parents before I turned 10. Life was hard. I had no one. I sold groundnuts after school, washed clothes, and sometimes went to bed without food." Her voice trembled. "But Chioma, your daughter, she saved me." Mama Ifeoma's hand tightened around hers. Amara smiled through her tears. "She paid my school fees, gave me clothes, even lied to the matron just to sneak food into my bag. She believed in me. And when I got a scholarship to study abroad, I didn't have money for flight tickets." She paused. Chioma used her father's gratuity to pay for everything. "Mama, your daughter changed my life." The silence that followed was sacred. Mama Ifeoma wept softly. Not out of sadness, but pride. "Chioma told me," she whispered, "that there was a girl she would give everything for. I didn't understand then. But now I do." She turned to Amara and cupped her face. "You are my daughter now." Amara's lips quivered. "Mama, you have taken care of me like she would have. You gave me a home, food, peace. You gave me back my dignity. I don't need blood to know family. I see it in your eyes." They embraced under the stars, 2 hearts stitched together by loss, love, and destiny. From that day on, Amara stopped calling her Mama Ifeoma. She simply called her Mama. And when people asked if she was her real mother, she smiled and said, "She is more than that." In the house called Mercy, 2 generations found healing. What began as a moment in a restaurant had now become a lifetime bond. God had not only reunited them, He had restored them. The story continued to spread across Lagos. From Oja to Surulere, from Ikeja to Lekki, people began sharing their own stories of old women ignored, elders mocked, hungry men turned away. Urban Palm Eatery rebranded completely. A sign was placed at the entrance that read, "No one is too small for kindness." Inspired by what she had experienced, Amara began an initiative called the Chioma Project, aimed at feeding elderly people in neglected corners of the city. Every Saturday, volunteers distributed warm meals, slippers, clean wrappers, and basic medication. Photos of Mama Ifeoma smiling in her new clothes became the face of the campaign. Students, market women, bankers, even celebrities joined the cause. In just 6 weeks, over 1,000 elders were reached. Ikoyi, once a place known only for the wealthy, now became a home of compassion. And at the center of it all was one necklace, a memory, a seed, a silent promise reborn through action. Chioma's legacy was now healing others. One morning, as Amara checked her mail, she found a handwritten letter with no return address. Inside was a short note: "Dear Dr. Amara, I watched your story online, and I wept. My own mother died last year, hungry, alone, and rejected. I wasn't there to help her, but seeing what you did for Mama Ifeoma healed something in me. You didn't just feed her body, you restored her soul. I've enclosed a check. Please use it for the Chioma Project. God bless you for making the rest of us remember how to be human, a child who was too late." Inside the envelope was a check for 2 million Nigerian nairas. Amara placed her hand over her chest. She had never expected this. Mama Ifeoma, sitting across the table, watched her silently. "What is it, my daughter?" Amara held up the letter and smiled. "It's a sign, Mama. That what we're doing matters." Mama Ifeoma nodded. "When you sow in tears, you harvest joy." Indeed, tears had birthed a revolution. 3 months later, the Chioma Project received its first national award for humanitarian service. The ceremony was held at Eco Hotel and Suites. Amara wore a simple green dress. Mama Ifeoma, dressed in royal blue ankara, walked beside her with the dignity of a queen. As Amara stood on stage to receive the plaque, she spoke with a voice full of gratitude. "I stand here today because one young woman, Chioma Modi, believed in me when I had nothing. This is not just my award. It is hers. It is my mama's. And it is for every forgotten elder out there who just needs to be remembered." The crowd stood and clapped. Mama Ifeoma, seated in the front row, cried openly. From the shadows of shame to the spotlight of honor, she had come full circle. A woman once laughed at for being hungry now sat as a symbol of resilience and grace. And in the heavens, one could almost imagine Chioma smiling. On a Sunday afternoon, back at the House of Mercy, Mama Ifeoma sat with Amara in the garden. Children from the neighborhood played nearby, laughter filling the air. The necklace, Chioma's necklace, now hung on a frame in the living room, encased in glass with the inscription, "This gave me back my mother. This gave me back my soul." Amara turned to Mama Ifeoma. "Mama, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't walked into that restaurant?" The old woman smiled softly. "God would have still found a way. But maybe, just maybe, we needed that moment to wake the world up." She took Amara's hand and added, "Never forget, kindness is the only language that crosses time, pain, and memory." The wind blew gently. The sun warmed their skin, and somewhere deep in the heart of Lagos, a story once born from shame became a legacy of grace, etched forever into the soul of the city. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn your notifications bell so that you can be notified when I drop another interesting and captivating story. And please don't forget to share what you learned from the story too. Love you all.